So the topic is insights on the balance from the contemporary resources. At the onset itself, I just want to take two insurance policies. One, I'm not an expert on this is like from a Western perspective, what I am presenting. I'm not well versed in the Western perspective. My studies and teachings are mostly in the Eastern perspective. But anyway, since we have more erudite persons to present that you have seen in last few days sessions. So I have taken up this, well, that is the first one. Second part is post-lunch session and philosophy is a deadly combination. So if you fall asleep, I'm helpless. I'll try my best to take you to the other world, but then if you are awake, yeah, probably as she said, we can interact. Okay, so with that, we'll enter into that. Lectures. So, we have seen that from the Vedic perspective, many different darshanas, what actually is mind, and what are the different components and functions and a thing throughout this, many different lectures, many perspectives we have seen. In the West also, it have a very long cherished intellectual tradition, starting from the Greece onwards. So it will be a kind of overview about the different philosophers and then different streams of science, how they used to see the mind. So what is actually mind? I think by now you might have got an idea, right? So if you don't mind, probably you can give a definition. What is actually mind? Well, let us see from a modern perspective what actually. So it refers to all these different kind of cognitive functions, faculties, which is encompassing what you call the consciousness, means the existence, the perceptions, means through the sensory inputs, we try to understand this world, and thinking, judgment, language, memory, and emotions. So it is what allows or enables us for this experiencing this world, right, and process information. So this is what actually the mind, this is a present understanding from the Western perspective. Now what we will do is that we'll try to understand the concept about the mind. These are the few things which is associated with the mind, and this we will try to understand from different perspective. One is the consciousness aspects. So it is the ability of being aware about one's surroundings, thoughts and emotions. So how I am conscious, we say like I am conscious about that. So this is what one of the aspects of that mind. Another is perception. As I said earlier, it is about the sensory perceptions. The senses is what actually brings the world, the sense of idea about this world to you. So that is through your, what you call the indriyas. And then cognition. Cognition is also little deeper aspects where you're processing the information, sometimes using rational thinkings and trying to understand, right? It is about also acquiring knowledge, right? And problem solving, reasoning, decision making, these all are part of that. Then emotions, I think all of you are aware about that. That aspects also, feelings, happiness, anger. So it's also part of the mind. And imagination, well, all the literature, many other kind of things, even in science and technology also you need imagination. So it's part of that, concepts and scenarios you are first creating and then realizing it. And then memory. So it is about acquiring sensations and storing and recollecting. So these all are the key aspects of the mind as we understood at present. Now, what we try to understand is the mind from different perspective. So one is philosophical. I just put it in that sequence because It's also a chronological in nature because our initial part, as the advent of what you call the axial period, they call, when a kind of intellectual bloom happened in different part of the world, including India, particularly, in India and the Greece, those regions. So it is first things developing is what actually philosophy. So from philosophical point of view also we'll try to understand what is actually mind. And then psychology. This is a later development. So that is also one major aspect. And then cognitive neuroscience. This is the current aspects. And then health and well-being, how mind is involved in that. And technology. So how technology comes into picture and how does that collaborate with our own mind and technology itself trying to become a kind of mind or simulating the mind aspect. Then the cultural and the social impacts. So how culture and society affects mind. So in these different perspective, we'll try to understand the mind. As I said, we don't go into the deeper because each one is actually a different study. So it's very deeper. Recently I was just looking at philosophy of mind. There are hundreds of texts and many other kinds. So in Western world, this is very actively studied. I mean, still studying. So it is mostly kind of overview. So before entering into this different perspective, we'll just try to understand the concept about the mind and what was that throughout the history. So how does that particular develop and what kind of understanding, the changes of that understanding throughout the ages. So a historical perspective, first we'll just have a look at that. So from the Western world, the Western civilization always ascribe the origins of their civilizations and learnings from Greece. So that is what they actually consider is their origin of civilization. Though, if you keenly study the history, that is not the case because Greece is not something originally brought up things. Many of the things Greece also have adapted from different regions, including India and Egypt. So you can see that. But anyway, the Westerners, because it's part of the Europe, so they would like to see Greece as the advent of civilization. So there, a number of philosophers you can see, a kind of series of philosophers. I'm not putting almost everybody's name, placing it here. So you can see that in the first millennium BC, in the middle of that, you can see Heraclitus, one of the major philosopher, 535 BC, you can see that. So what is his view of the mind? See, he views reality, including the mind, as it is in a perpetual state of flux. Means this entire world is actually a continuously changing in nature, including the mind. So mind, like everything else, is dynamic and then evolves through experiences. So everything is under continuous changes. And the mind perceives the world through this particular constant transformations. So everything is changing, so including the mind, and that's how it understands. So what he emphasized is, see, understanding comes from embracing this particular impermanent nature of this world. So you need to understand the world is impermanent in nature. Hence there is nothing like one reality. Reality keeps changing. So this is the nature of the world, and it's the nature of the mind also. Right? So this is what he is emphasizing, ever-changing nature of existence. Probably, if you study Buddhist theories, you can see, not only in Buddhist, even in Vedanta also we can see that this is nothing very new to us, this ever-changing nature. In Sankhya also we can see that. And then another philosopher, Parmenides, is also almost contemporary, you can see that. What is for him, the mind is the instrument through which humans can rise above the illusions and the sensory world. Sensory world, of course, it might be changing, but then that is the instrument through which you understand one permanent reality, which is unchanging in nature. So from his perspective, Of course, mind is an instrument that is to understand the impermanent reality, unchanging reality. And this world, as it is just an appearance. Does it coordinate with any of our theories? Probably. You can think about that, right? So you have two different views here. So you believe that only through reason could the mind distinguish between appearance and realities. One is the world is appearance. Behind that appearance, there is an unchanging reality. So this is what permanentist views. The mind should align with the eternal and immutable nature of reality, which is singular in nature. So this is in opposition to Heraclitus' view of continuous change. So here you can see that opposing views are there. Right, as we move on, of course, before that, Pythagoras and many other philosophers, I'm not including everybody's views, some of the interesting one. Then we have Socrates, I think, which is very familiar, very popular also from the Greek philosophy. So he advocates introspective method, emphasizing self-knowledge, means the knowledge is within us that we need to brought out through proper analysis. This is what he is emphasizing. Again, they are considering mind also as a instrument of cognition as well as rational thinkings. So it possesses innate knowledge. So his motto is that the unexamined life is not worth living. So he actually is one of the very influential philosophers in the Western world, Socrates, through his this rational thinking. And his disciple, we can say that his disciple is Plato in the 4th century, you can see that BC. He proposed the theory of forms. So theory of forms is two different things. He is actually synthesizing the different views of Heraclitus, who spoke about this world is completely changing every minute or every moment. That is one view. So he's synthesizing both. That has become the realm of becoming and the realm of being. That is the permanentist view. That means there is an unchanging reality also. So he's synthesizing both these aspects, and then mind is again an instrument through which you understand this, and then through your rational thinking. So you also propose immortality of the soul. And he believed in rebirth. I mean, in the Greek time, please keep that thing in mind. As we go forward, you will see the changes. And then we have Aristotle, another great and very famous philosopher. His Aristotelian logics are still taught in schools and colleges. It is a very influential philosopher. And from, you can also know that from the Christian theological perspective, even Plato and Aristotle's contributions are great. I think they adapted many of their theories also. We'll see that later. So he considered soul as the form of the body. So you don't consider it as something completely immaterial in nature. And he's integrating the biological, integral to the biological life and sensory experiences. So mind is actually part of the body itself. Probably you might be noticing I will be using the word soul and mind interchangeably. I mean, don't accuse me, because in the Western world itself, they use these terminologies. Soul and mind are interchangeably used. Whenever we hear soul, we have a tendency to align it with Atman, which is actually technically wrong, because in the West, they don't have a concept about pure consciousness. That is not there. In the Greek period, yes, it is there. That is what in the permanentists you have seen. But then later, what happens, especially in the medieval period, when the Christianity was the dominant religion, the soul become completely something aligned with mind and God facing. So here you can see that I interchangeably using. But in modern period, especially studies on particularly psychology, they don't use the word soul. Why? Because soul is associated with something religious, spiritual in dimension. Hence, they have removed that. That is no more in discussion in that. It is still lies in the philosophy or in some theological aspects, but not in scientific part. So that the meaning also slightly keeps changing over the period. So here he proposed three different kinds of souls, Aristotle. So one is about the plant state, so it don't have much abilities, right? And then for the animals, a little more upgraded because it knows more sensations and other things. And for the humans, it is rational soul. So humans can actually have rational thinking. So it has much more, like considered to be in the top of the evolution. So this is how, and he considered like there is passive intellect, which is getting sensory aspects, and there is active intellect, which actually looking at the abstract universal truth, and it is eternal in nature. And then comes to the medieval period. Probably you might have noticed the time periods. It is in BC period, and then what we are seeing is a jump into AD, and later, almost separated by 700 or even more than 1,000 years. Why? Is because the political scenario have changed in the Europe. Greece is no more in the lead. The Italians, or what you call the Romans, have taken over the political administration. Though the Greeks had educated them, you can read Swami Vivekananda's book. He is commenting upon how the influence of Greece is happening on the Romans. But the political power have shifted, and philosophy have taken a back seat. And then there is another thing happen. That is the advent of Christianity. And when the Christianity comes into picture, for almost 300 years, that just spread among the Gentiles. It was not making much impact upon that. But then it was a churning period there. Then later the Roman Empire adapted Christianity as its official religion. And from there onwards, its nature also changed. Then the Christianity and or what you call the church started dictating terms how science should happen. So whatever understanding they had so far, some of the things are borrowed from other things like Aristotelian logics and Plato's mysticism. Everything came into picture. Other than that, nothing is acceptable. So even the earth-centrism against the heliocentrism. So these all things are parallelly happening. So the science taken a back seat. So there is a saying like, there was only one step the science has to put, but it has to wait for 1,500 years until the Renaissance, which came into Europe, for the science to come up. So until then, there was this Christian religious hold was there. So within that, but they also started processing what is actually philosophy. If you look at Jesus' sayings, like Sermon of Mount and like Sri Buddha, he was mostly emphasizing on a dharmic life rather than metaphysical discussions. Even Sri Buddha also was a bit reluctant to involve in a lot of metaphysics. Similarly, in Jesus' life also, not much emphasis on the metaphysics, but the metaphysics was later added into that to give it a kind of full, it is necessary of the church, mostly done by Saint Paul and other philosophers at that time. Saint Paul is not a philosopher, of course, he's a religious head and one of the major contributors for the Christianity and church. And you can see Saint Augustine coming here. So here you can see that here exploring the inner life of the soul and in relation to the divine truth. So now everything is aligned towards the religious things. So the resurrections, washing away your sin with the blood of Jesus, all the purpose is for you only to redeem yourself through the blood and believing in that particular sacrifice. So this is how things getting aligned. And then Thomas Aquinas, so their philosophy building is also something going with that. So your mind, the concept about mind, soul and everything is aligned in that way. So you can see that Thomas Aquinas, he's integrating Aristotelian philosophy with Christian theology. and emphasizing rationality and the intellect's role in understanding God's creation. So it is then the God creation comes into picture, you have to justify that, and what is the part of the mind. It is to just understand what is actually God, and that orientation towards becoming what you call redeemed from your sins and attaining that, going to the heavens. So all the aspects of your thinkings and everything is getting aligned. So mind is a part of the soul, the rational or intellectual part of the soul. So this is the concept there. And then after this medieval period, you can see the advent of Renaissance around 14th, 15th century. It's happening. And one of the prominent researcher, the philosopher here is René Descartes. So his famous saying, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. So this is actually a complete deviance from the theology-driven philosophy or scientific thinking. So he is moving away from that. So here is what the church and the politics and everything started, or scientific inquiry started slowly departing in different ways. I think earlier, in our morning session, we can see that Ramesh sir was speaking about the philosophy. Actually, in earlier days, there is no distinction between scientific inquiry and philosophy. Everything, even Newton's the thesis itself, naturally philosophy of what you call scientific motion of bodies. So the word philosophy is there. So philosophy and the science only departing in the later part, after these people comes into picture. So he brings up what he called the dualism. He said mind and body are two different things. Mind, of course, is the instrument for cognition, but it is completely different from body. So he's the one who strongly emphasized on the dualistic aspects of that. Then we have Thomas Hobbes. He is advocating materialism. So it is arguing that the mind and the mental processes are functions and the physical matter and brain interactions. So it is what you call the physicalism or materialism. And John Locke, so they introduce the empiricism, arguing that mind starts from blank and knowledge comes through sensory perception. This is also going with the materialistic aspect only. And George Berkeley, and he proposed idealism. This is another view. So what it says is that, well, this is something very close to Parmenides' views in the Greek. Only mind and ideas exist. The world actually doesn't exist. The physical objects are mere collections of ideas perceived by mind. Means this world actually doesn't exist. It only exists in your mind as like ideas. Again, you can see parallels with the Vijnanavada school of Buddhism. You can see that. And then David Hume, he is challenging the notion of a stable, continuous self, suggesting the mind is collection of just perceptions. Right? This is also sensory perception. That is what actually given rise to the phenomenon called mind. And then we have this modern philosophy in psychology, where you can see Immanuel Kant, another very influential philosopher. He asserted mind actively shapes experience through innate categories, the categories of the knowledge and concepts, bridging empiricism and rationalism. And then Sigmund Freud. So this is what you can see the advent of psychology coming into picture. Is that he lived in the second part of the 19th century and the first part of the 20th century. Is immensely influential in propagating the psychological aspects. So he pioneered actually the psychoanalysis, exploring the unconscious mind and its influence on the behavior and thought. So he comes with different ideas on how does this mind works. And then Carl Jung is again his disciple, student. He's expanding Freud's view, introducing concepts like collective, unconscious, and archetypes. And then we have William James promoting functionalism, viewing mental processes in terms of their purpose and adaptive value. They are not much worried about whether it is material, non-material aspects, how the things functions, that's it. And then we have contemporary development. Still we are talking about the concept about mind through ages. Cognitive psychology comes into picture. These all are mostly late 19th century and 20th century phenomenons, focusing on the mental processes as perceptions, memory, and problem solving. And the neuroscience, 20th century, examining brain structures and functions to understand the biological basis of mind and consciousness, still continuing with a lot of vigor. And artificial intelligence, that is probably in the 25th century. I think now most of you guys might be familiar with that, exploring the potential of the machines to replicate or simulate human thought processes. And that's how the journey of mind through the history. We can see that how different concepts and how does it attains different interpretations and functionalism, part of that. So now we'll go back to the other understanding the mind through different perspectives. One is the philosophical perspective. So one is the mind-body problem, right? So what is this mind? What is this body? And how it is interacting? Is mind physical in nature or is it non-materialistic in nature? All these kind of questions are coming. So here it is examining how the non-physical mind interact with the physical body. Mind was considered as non-physical for quite some time. Even now also, some of the sections. And they propose, one is dualism, which is the mind and body are distinct. This is by Descartes, one, including the substance and the property dualism. And another view is monism, where mind and body are one. And then including, this is physicalism, means the physical basis. And idealism, that is another one, means there is only mind, nothing else exists. This world is an appearance. So that is also part of the monism. And then we have consciousness, divided into what you call, we can say that the cognitive function, which is easy problems, and then the hard problem. Hard problem is that how do you explain consciousness? What is actually consciousness? The Western world is really grappling with this particular idea of this consciousness. Still, there is a multitude of views, they cannot agree upon each other, so everyone have their own views on what is actually consciousness. And now, there are also views that consciousness is fundamental, even in the Western world, like David Chalmers. He is the one who actually proposed this hard problem of consciousness, that is qualia. Means we can understand cognitive functions, but if someone is asking you how a red color is red to you, and what is your experience, how can you explain by just brain processes? These subjective experiences cannot be explained through just physicalism. So this is the fundamental problems of the consciousness. And again, when we say consciousness from the Western perspective, we are not talking about the pure, what you call Atman or Brahman, that we have understood in our own philosophy. Right. So then they have these theories of materialisms and panpsychism. That means consciousness is fundamental and it is pervading. Materialism considered as just a brain activity. And then we have functionalism, that is considering mind to a computer, just looking only at the functions and its processings. Then phenomenology, that is about the lived experience and subjective nature. This is what actually we do through questionnaires and other things we use to get it from people. What is your experience about this particular yoga program or yoga intervention? So it's all part of another psychological kind of analysis. Then philosophy of perceptions, how sensory information constructs reality, or realism versus idealism, right? So it is mediated one. And then ethics and the mind. So this links rationality and emotion to the moral reasoning. And then from the psychological perspective, you can see that psychodynamic, this is a later development. As I said earlier, Sigmund Freud had contributed to this. So emphasizing the unconscious mind, the early experiences and interpersonal relationships. So Freud have coined these terms, id, ego and superego. Id is like our basic desires and everything which is in the unconscious mind, it is there. So suppressed emotions, many desires, something equivalent like our samskaras and other things. And then ego, that is our rational mind. And then superego, that is mostly ethical aspects, like mythical and moral aspects. So there is always this conflict between this ethical and becoming like a more refined person, and then your innate desires, something which is not fulfilled. And if we suppress those kind of desires, and probably that leads to some psychological issues. So this is a theory which is proposed by Sigmund Freud, and later also developed by, contributed by Carl Jung in that. And behavioral aspects, this focuses on the observable behaviors learned through conditioning and reinforcement, like Skinner and Watson. So these are also part of the studies in psychology, like even trainings, how to make people learn well, and what is actually deciding their interest in that. So these all through understanding through behavioral aspects. And then we have cognitive aspect, exploring thinking, memory, decision making, and again comparing it with the mechanistic aspect of the mind, like a computer. Then humanistic aspects, so it is highlighting self-actualizations and personal growth, like Maslow's necessity, this aspect. And then cross-cultural aspects also, studies like cultural influences on behavior, contrasting individualistic and collective cultures. And then another aspect is evolutionary aspects. So you can understand, you also study mind from the evolutionary perspective. So it is examining psychological traits shaped by natural selections, emphasizing survival and reproduction. So if you look at like animals, you don't see like 10,000 years, probably lions or tigers have not changed much. But then the humans and human relationships, everything has undergone sea change. How we see the opposite sex, what are the relationships. So the whole thing have undergone change, and it is still undergoing changes. So these all things also, this is the evolutionary aspect. In these aspects also mind can be studied. Then we have cognitive neuroscience perspective. This is what you call emerging sciences, or getting a lot of traction nowadays. Even we are also involved in that. Mind-body, again, brain and mind relationships, like linking neural activities through emotions and behaviors via tools like fMRI, PET. So they are considering within the brains there are certain regions, so that is what actually leading to the workings of the mind. So through different experiences and through these machineries, you can find out how things work. Right? So that is one aspect. The neural networks and cognitions, studying neuronal communications, again, a subset of the studies, and its role in attention, problem solving, and language. So even we have also designing studies and other things to see how yoga works and how a task is done by a person better way if you are undertaking a yoga program for say like 3 months or 6 months, particularly in some kind of ailment conditions like diabetics or something where like cognitive declining is there, and by practicing yoga for quite some time, how your cognition is improving. So through EEGs or fMRI or TCDs, you can study that. So then memory and learning, and another thing is consciousness, again investigating neural correlates of the subjective experiences. So if someone is saying that mind is completely non-material, then they are saying no, that is material, it have a material basis, it is there through neural correlates. Again, be careful about this term. It is not the brain creating the mind, it is neural correlate, so it is correlation, right? Yeah, correlation is not causation, please keep that also in mind. And emotion and decision makings, examining how areas like amygdala, different brain regions, amygdala is the region dealing with the fear, our primal feelings like sadness, happiness, pleasure. These aspects, how does this interact with your prefrontal cortex, which is mostly known for rational thinkings, how does it interact? So these is also areas of study. And then application, using insights into treating neurological disorders and advances for brain-computer interface. Now comes to the health and well-being. This is another perspective. You can see that the mind-body connection. Again, mental states affects physical health. I think everybody knows that, right? Practices like meditation and yoga promotes relaxation. You can, use for reducing stress, for your well-being. Mental health, emotional stabilities, anxieties, these all things can be understood and then addressed. Resilience and coping, positive thinking, coping with stress. And then lifestyle and well-being, so physical activities, balanced diet, how does that affect the functions of the mind? If you get better sleep, how does your mind function? If you're not getting proper sleep, how does your mind, it will affect your mind. So these all things part of this study. These all things what I'm just like an overview, these all things are actually areas of research. And actually it is happening also. And then holistic approaches. CBT stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. This is a Western technique they have developed so that if you have psychological issues, so through counselings and then interacting with people, you can develop a better to come, helping them to come out of the, say like a traumatic experience or any shortcomings or anxiety or depressions. So these also, here also there is immense potentiality, as like Jayaraman sir earlier had said. Why don't we do something based upon our Indian systems of knowledge? In fact, some of my MD students are also doing research where they are developing modules for counseling based upon our own yogic understanding for substance abuse. So there is there or here, but there is a lot of scope for involving those activities in research. And then cultural and social influences, culture believes in community support, and then those aspects, mental well-being, and preventive measures, educational aspects, how does better mental health can be achieved. Well, another perspective is technological. So here, artificial intelligence and mind comes into picture. AI simulates cognitive processes like learning and reasoning. I think nowadays you're probably getting familiarized with that. So can artificial intelligence replace mind? So this is a question. Well, I'm just leaving it to you. If you are interested, we can interact on that. And human-computer interface, here again, technology influences cognition, including attention and memory. So you can have brain-computer interfaces, people having physical disabilities and other things. So like Neuralink chips and other things recently developed, you can implant and you can interface. By thinking itself, you can make things work. So that is the potential of that. The neuroscience and technology, neuroimaging, computational models to understanding brain activities, then virtual reality, augmented realities, these all are coming into picture. Already there are devices, like even Apple, they are having VR devices. And ethical and philosophical implications. Well, when technology becomes very pervasive, the problem is that with your privacy and other things, right? There is nothing like private. Everything, even if you go to Google or wherever things, you just type something for searching, they are watching and storing. They are associating with. That's what they say, please enter your email and then do browsing. So that they will associate the email with your browsing tendencies. So they can customize the advertisement and everything for you. So the business can go. So basically they are looking everything from the data to increase business. So but this is also a kind of intrusive into the privacy. Now the Europe and America are having a great problem because of the American companies, how to control them. So Europe have very strict laws and they are bringing also new things. We are a little behind, but we are also having our own laws which is coming up. Right, and then we have applications in the health and education. So apps and devices improving mental health, like through remote assistance, counseling, or listening to some, some instructions. That's also you can get betterments, like doing meditation or yoga. So nowadays everything is becoming online. So different kind of tools and techniques, like technology is ever changing and it is bringing new vistas of ways of doing things. And then from another perspective is from the cultural and societal impact. So this is like culture influences thinking and behavior. I think everybody knows that. And collectivistic or individualistic culture shapes goals differently. And then socialization and the identity formation. So mind can be understood from these aspects also, like family, education, and how your friends, they shape the way you think, the approaches. So mind is influenced in these aspects also. And the value systems, and the impact of globalizations. So promote cultural exchanges, that is good, having diverse perspective. The problem is that the dominant culture always used to influence you. So if you ask, like in United States or in the Europe, how many of you see Indian cinema? What will be the percentage? Probably it will be less than 2%. But if you ask Indians how many Hollywood films you see, it's great, isn't it? Great percentage will be there. So the dominant cultures always dominate, and a kind of homogenization happens, not only in art and literature or in everywhere. It has that dominance. So homogenization happens, the diversity will be a casualty there. And technology and cultural evolutions, you can see that digital age where we are living, how constant connectivity and these digital interactions are influencing our mental process and social behavior, right? So it affects attention, memory, and norms, and social media shapes, different self-perceptions. Like morning, how many of you guys, while getting up, don't look at your WhatsApp message or Instagram messages? Very rare. Okay, some are there, good. So you have mental peace, right? But at least within 15 minutes, no? Never look at her. Okay, madam, you are at disadvantage. Your student might be asking for some help. Right. Okay. This is, I think, you guys are, our students are in their 20s, and your faculty is 30s, 40s. But the thing is that this is more pervasive in the teenagers, and parents are grappling with this particular problem, how to keep away from the social media. Australia already had legal, everything came up with law, like below a particular age, they are not supposed to involve with social media. So these all things are current, very important aspects, right? So these aspects also you can include in the study with the mind. Right, so that is about my presentation about this mind, different perspective, and here we have some interactions. So, is mind a material or non-material thing? So this is the question. So we can also answer. So what do you think? Is it a material or non-material? Non-material. How many of you say non-material? Please raise your hands. Non-material. Okay. And how many of you say material? Mind is a material. Well, it seems that many of you have slept in our earlier lectures.
For them it is immaterial.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, different perspective. I'm not saying that this is the truth or that is the truth, but then what is your understanding? That is what. Well, if you have listened keenly to our lectures in the earlier, you can see that it all belongs to material, right? It is subtle material, subtle, sushma. So that is what. But in the Western world, for a long time, this is non-material, and then later part, then when the brain studies and other thing, they say, no, this is material or material basis. Yeah, we will see that, who all are speaking what. And then, is there any physical basis of the mind? So this is continuation to that particular question. And also, this question, I mean, this is my own question. I'm asking why there is so much of difference of understanding about the mind throughout the ages in the Western world. And if you have listened to our lectures, you can see that more or less the concept of the mind is steady. There is no much very wide varieties in that. Of course, there or here, small changes are there, but otherwise, it's more consistent. But in the Western world, that is not the case. So why? What could be the reason? Well, we will just have a small look at that. So mind is a material or non-material? It's raising a question, and then different people have different ideas. So dualism says that mind is immaterial in nature, distinct from the material body, right from the Plato, Descartes. Descartes is the one, the great for dualism. Thomas Aquinas, Leibniz, David Shammers. So all those say that it is dualism, right? Both are two different things. Idealism, what do they say? Only mind and ideas exist, right? Material world is just a perception. So this is idealism. Berkeley, not exactly Kant fully, but to some extent, and Hegel and Schopenhauer, they say everything is ideas. And materialism, mind is a material and a function of a physical process of the brain. So this is by Offray, Hobbes, Skinner, and modern scientific view. So this is what now the predominant view which is coming, right? Mind is material, but it is a product of brain. So our materialism or the Indian materialism is different from this, please understand. In fact, this is a kind of reverse correlation, right? Here earlier, Jayaraman sir had explained from the Mahat, everything coming down. So here it is a different view. Right, then emergent realism. So mental properties emerges from complex physical interactions, but then mental properties cannot be fully reduced to the and explained by physical components alone. So there is many others views like that. And then others are functionalism. They don't mind whether it is material or non-material. They are mostly looking at what is actually its roles, what is the functions it is done. Well, and any physical basis of the mind, well, this is what it is differing views there. The physical basis of the mind is rooted in the brain and the complex network of the neurons, neurotransmitters, and brain regions which interact, which give rise to the mental processes and conscious. So this is the modern scientific view. And these components work together and produces what you call the complex mental processes that underlie perception, thought, emotions, and consciousness. So all the basis is the brain. So that is what now it is coming. So scientific view is converging into that. Of course, some have it slightly different, but this is a majority view. So advances in neuroscience continue and that deepen our understandings, and then it can explain. So it is, they are only saying we don't have enough scientific instrument capability. Whatever capability is there is now limited. So it is just a matter of developments of technology, and we can explain the phenomenon of mind in the basis of brain. So this is the view, scientific view. Now, why does this wide varieties of differences throughout the ages in the mind in the Western world? Some of the things are like the changing the philosophical aspects. You can see that earlier it was metaphysical, ancient time, and then in the medieval period it is theological, and then in modern period it is reason, and then what you call science, technology, then psychology, all those coming into picture. Yeah, then advances in the science, so emergence of the psychology and scientific discipline and technology, cultural aspects, Renaissance in the later European, what you call the middle of this 20th, the second millennium. They are emphasizing on reason rather than belief systems. So there, then the shifting of the mind is coming from the Thomas Aquinas and the what you call other Christian theologians. And shifting focus on inquiry, metaphysics to scientific and empirical studies. So they can justify why the concept about mind have changed over a period. Well, or it could be because of lack of clarity. Maybe. So let us see. What is this, that particular word, mind belongs? There actually isn't an exact one-to-one translation of the English word mind in German. So you can also Google and see what is the exact word for mind in German. There is no word. Of course, there is a word they use, gaze, but it is not capturing all the nuances of the mind. Same is the case with French or Spanish or Italian. But in the Greek period, they say nous. That refers to mind, which is also having almost similar understanding like what we have. But then the period you should know, that is 2,500 years back. And the Latin also is quite old. They say men. This is what the word they use for that. Now let us come to the Sanskrit word. But in Sanskrit, the concept of the mind is often referred as manas. I think we have a lot of lectures on that. So it encompasses the faculties of thought, perceptions, and understanding. Of course, some it's like only a junction part, but more or less you can see. And this particular thing is actually consistent, these views. And etymologically also we'll see that. And with exact meaning in Sanskrit, the manas, that represent the mind, right? You don't feel any kind of difference of opinion, manas and mind. It is even rhyming, right? And it is better than any other language. You see, it is closer to the word mind and its consistency. And what could be the reason? Why Sanskrit word manas is close to the mind, the word mind? What could be the reason? Any insight? Well, let us, a bit of etymology would be interesting. The word mind, the English word mind, is coming from the Old English word gemind, meaning memory, remembrance, state of remembered, right? So this is how, so these are all coming from the Proto-Germanic. Proto-Germanic is also, is Old German, or what you call the Proto-Indo-Europeans. You can see that from there. And Gamind is, you just go with the words. And the Gothic, muns, thought, munan, it means to think, manan in Hindi, right? So Old Norse, mini, that is for mind, and the German minne, so these all are cognating with the same word. Now, look at this. The Proto-Indo-European, I mean, this is the term coinage by the ancient Western historians. The root is men. From there comes the thinking, or what you call the source of the mind. So mind is coming from the men, right? So that is the root word. So it is, if you look at this, you can understand that the Proto-Indo-European, they put these language groups into Indo-European language, and then they had said there are thousands of years back some pastoral communities. They developed a certain language and other things, and they came with their cattle to the India, driven away the Dravidians living here and established what we call the Aryan culture. So that is what we call the Aryan invasion theory, and later, since they don't have enough evidences, they slowly transferred it to Aryan migration theory. But the problem is that the root word is actually originating from here. And it is actually migrated outward. It is not inward migration. It is outward migration. That's what you see. Much clarity is lying here. So, and when is this outward migration happening? It is in the declining phase of the Sindhu and the Indus Valley civilization period. So eastward and westward migration happens. They carried some of the things. There is the present day Syria. It's called Hittites. Bani Paul, I think some of the king's name. Actually, they use a lot of Sanskrit words there. So, but the Europeans are saying the Sanskrit actually came, the culture came from outside to India. Well, that is not the case. because Indus Valley civilization is much older. When they proposed this theory, mostly by Max Muller, the excavations of Indus Valley civilization had not happened. And Swami Vivekananda is opposing, because he lived before, and he actually passed away before the excavations of Indus Valley. He said, no, I don't agree. It's not like Indian culture is not just only 1,500 years, because they have drawn a line, 1,500 BC. He don't agree with that. Even without the evidence of Indus Valley, he didn't agree then. But then when the Indus Valley civilization, they came, they come up with another theory. They say, no, Aryans came and then decimated the indigenous people, driven them to south. They become the Dravidians, and that became like a big politics, which is played out there. But the case is that it is the outward migration theory. If you study linguistics and many other words, you can see, for example, cognition. It looks like a very English word, isn't it? It is from Gna, the Gnostics. In the period of Jesus, there is another sect which is called the Essene sect. They call Gnostics. That Gna sound, it is coming from Jnana. So this is how it is things. So as like Jaraman sir had said, it's something like, digesting many other kind of things, and then they are re-exporting to us. So it is high time we should stand up and defend the culture. That's all my presentation. Thank you. Well, I would like to take questions. Madam have already provoked you guys. This is the end of your state of the mind. This is represented now. The beginning was different.
Thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. The first one, a little lengthier question, but I'll try to convey. From the past 4 sessions that we have sat through and understood the concept of manas from the perspective of Vedic philosophy and from the perspective of contemporary sources, I felt that from the perspective of Vedic philosophy, the concept of mind is much more broader in terms of how much impact the mind can have on a person's life on a day-to-day basis. Whereas when it comes to the contemporary perspective, with the advent of science, I think somewhere the understanding of mind is very, very compartmentalized, say cognition, say perception, say behavior or moral. So do you think because of too much of fractionation of the understanding of mind, somewhere we are losing the value or the impact the mind can have on our day-to-day life, on our well-being, on our health? That is one question. And also, from your point of view, do you think mind is aware of its own existence? I have 2 questions. Thank you.
Well, the first part is that is because our educational systems and the way we been brought up, so all are in the Western models. Even though they have changed, we have not changed. So we don't have a proper understanding about our philosophical principles and ideas. So in that case, yeah, so it is only slowly emerging. And the second question is whether mind is aware about itself. Its own existence. Yes, I think. Yeah, if it is a one-word answer. Yeah, because this awareness and cognition from the modern perspective I am speaking, or otherwise also, if you are speaking from the Indian perspective, of course, the buddhi and the ahankara, I am existing, I am seeing, so those aspects are coming in picture in that. But otherwise, in modern perspective also it is existing. Yep. Any other questions?
I just wanted to know your comment on the origin of philosophy in our culture and the West. How you have studied like Western and Indian both, right? So
I have already confessed that I am not very well versed in the Western philosophy. I have rudimentary, because when you study Indian philosophy, you have a tendency to study Western philosophy also. So if you look at, the one which I have started with, the development of the concept about the mind, I started from Heraclitus and the Parmenides. Parmenides and Heraclitus views are actually Buddhist view and Vedantic view. In fact, in the earlier times, when the Takshashila, those kind of universities were there, the bridging part between the India and the Greece is through Persia. So a lot of people used to come here and study. Even in Nalanda, Sarvakalashala, many people from Greece, Afghanistan, Tibet, China, Japan, everyone came and studied here. So India was actually the center of learning once upon a time. So definitely there is an Indian influence which knowingly or unknowingly West is not accepting. For example, the mathematics, if you look at, it's not only philosophy, science also, mathematics, the algebra, it is known in the name of a Arabic mathematician, but actually algebra. And who is calling this? The Europeans are calling this particular stream as algebra. But then what we call Bijaganita, right? So, and what Arabs call? Arabs call it Hindu science. So, there is always this movement of the knowledge system, but unfortunately in the last 1,000 years of Gulami, or what you call the invasions and colonialization, we lost touch with our own roots. So it is high time, as Jayaraman sir repeatedly had emphasized. So I think universities like this has to give prominence for studying that. So philosophy, I will always say, India is the birthplace of philosophy.
What is the origin of philosophy? Failure. Normally, as necessity is the origin of discovery and invention, failure is the origin of philosophy. If I fail, I try to philosophize, etc. Jokes apart, there is one book, as Rajesh sir mentioned, in that direction. There is a book, there is a beautiful work that everyone should consult. Journey of the Upanishads to the West. Journey of the Upanishads to the West by Swami Tathagatananda from Ramakrishna Bhatt. It's a beautiful publication. All that Rajesh sir now hinted, that how mathematics, language, philosophy, etc. traveled from India abroad. So all this is captured with the quotations of the scholars of the West, of the ancient, means 17th, 18th century. They have all those references, the Greek references, etc., how they have received the knowledge from India. So all that has been beautifully documented. So one should refer to that book, Journey of the Upanishads to the West, where you will get the answer to the question, origin of philosophy.